been a while since my last tutorial, but today I'm back with another sound design tutorial. In this video, I want to focus on the recreation of one of my all-time favorite synths, which is the lead synth in Nils Fram's track called Sunson. Um, First, we're gonna have a listen at the short recreation of the synth I did, and after that, I'm gonna take you through some key elements and how I achieved the sound. Also keep in mind that I'm just covering the lead synth in this video. In the original track, the synth is layered with all kinds of other elements. For example, his custom built pipe organ and some other elements. So let's have a listen and then we'll have a look at the key elements. Yeah, so the original synth he uses is a Juno 60, I guess, but since I don't have one, I'm just gonna have to use some plugins, and the plugin I chose is Serum. As you could hear, and the sound is not that difficult and complex from a sound design perspective, but I think it's still quite hard to nail it without saying I have nailed it. I know there's some improvements to be had, but yeah, it's just a very expressive sound in his track, and it's not even it's not that easy, I guess, to nail it. Yeah, as you can see, I use two oscillators and a sub oscillator. Oscillator A is 1 octave up and has +7 semitones, which gives it this chord vibe. I used a basic saw wave in unison. I used two voices with a slight detune. Oscillator B is a Juno wavetable from the analog wavetables, which I think is fitting because since he uses a Juno 60, and it adds quite some low end to the sound. If I just solo it and mute the sub and oscillator A, this is oscillator A, and if I add oscillator B, it gives it this nice low end and quite some character. If I then add the sub oscillator, which is quite low in level, but it just adds this bit more low end, which I think suits the synth. Heading over to the filter, it's a basic 24 dB low cut filter with some modulation, which we're gonna look at later. I used all the inputs, so noise, sub, and oscillator A and B are routed to the filter. Speaking of the noise, I chose the Juno 60 noise. Not that high of a level as well, so it just adds some kind of small amount of character to the sound. Looking at the envelopes, they are quite short. Envelope 1 is for the amp. It's quite low on attack and decay, very short, and it has some sustain and release. Envelope 2 is the envelope for opening the filter, and it also has no sustain, quite a short decay and release time, and some attack. If we have a look at the modulation matrix, we'll see that the first modulation is envelope 2 for modulating the cutoff, and there's quite a lot of modulation coming from the velocity as a source, going to all different kinds of destinations. For example, also the filter cutoff is modulated. KS1 is modulating oscillator B's fine tuning, KS2 is modulating oscillator A's fine tuning just to add this, analog character. And the other modulations you'll see is going from velocity to envelope 1 and 2 attacks, and also the decay and release of envelope 1. This is the way to add this kind of expressiveness I mentioned earlier, because what I did is I added, it says add some random. It's a MIDI device in Ableton that just allows you to add some random velocity values to your input. And by that, every note that's played has a different kind of random velocity attached and will add variation to the sound if you modulate the oscillator. So without it, it's very static. And if you add the velocity randomness, every note adds to the cutoff and envelope modulation, and that way you'll have this expressive oscillator that just sounds a bit different every time note hits. Yeah, so the effects train is some saturation, some compressor, and I took out some of the low mids, and I also added some sidechain compression to the kick and some chorus, and just made sure to have some bass mono applied, because if you add the chorus, it gets a bit messy in the bass frequencies. As return channels, I use a spring reverb on return A, some tape delay on channel B, and some room verb on channel C. Yeah, so that's the recreation of the lead synth. I hope you liked it and learned something. If you're gonna use it in your tracks, please let me know. I'd like to have a listen to them. Yeah. See ya.